President Obama today ratcheted up his criticism of Arizona's immigration law. One of the darkest clouds over his relationship with the visiting president of Mexico, and it may just have been just what Felipe Calderon wanted to hear. Mr. Obama explained why his administration may in fact go ahead and challenge the Arizona law in court, a law that he calls a misdirected expression of frustration.
I think the Arizona law has the potential of being applied in a discriminatory fashion. Now, after it was initially passed, the Arizona legislature amended it and said that this should not be carried out in a discriminatory way, but I think a fair reading of the language of the statute indicates that it gives the possibility of individuals who are deemed suspicious of being illegal immigrants from being harassed or arrested, and the judgments that are going to be made in applying this law are troublesome. What I've directed my Justice Department to do is to look very carefully at the language of this law to see whether it comports both with our core values and existing legal standards, as well as the fact that the federal government is ultimately the one charged with immigration policy. And I expect to get a final report back from the Justice Department soon, at which point we'll make some decisions in terms of how we are going to address that law.
After President Calderon's visit to the White House, he came right here to the Situation Room for an exclusive interview. This is his only television interview during a state visit to Washington. I asked him what's wrong with the folks in Arizona wanting to protect their border.
That is not exactly the problem. I fully respect the right of any nation to establish the legislation that that nation wants, or their people. And of course, the right of any nation to enforce the law and protect their own borders. But the problem is, first, that we need to face this challenge in a comprehensive way, as President Obama says, and that implies to recognize the rights and the contribution of the people to the growth of this great nation. But on the other hand, in particular in Arizona, there is some racial profiling criteria in order to enforce the law, that it's against any sense of human rights, and of course is provoking a very disappointing things, or very disappointing opinion in Mexico and around the world, even here in America. Because
the governor of Arizona says there is no racial profiling, that they're not going to simply stop someone who looks Mexican. They're going to have the police are going to have a reason for stopping someone, and if that reason then results in them asking for papers, that's a different matter.
It could be, and I fully respect the opinion of the governor, but in the point of view of not only Mexican people, but also Mexican-American people, and specialists, and analysts, the new law precisely has this kind of risk.
Even the amendments that were made, the changes that were made in this law in Arizona?
Even with that, because the reason is we need to clarify, in particular it would be fine if the judicial authority is able to clarify how dangerous or how bad is the law. If the authority said it's good, we will respect, but anyway, I think that we need to focus in a different way the solution of immigration here in the States.
You heard the President of the United States say that he doesn't have the votes in the Senate, maybe not in the House of Representatives, to pass comprehensive immigration reform that would include a pathway to citizenship, U.S. citizenship, for illegal immigrants. So in the meantime, is there anything wrong with states trying to tighten up their security?
The point is to introduce these kind of elements, especially racial profiling aspects that are attempting against what we consider human rights. It's the principle of discrimination, which is against the values of this great nation.
Has your foreign ministry issued a travel advisory to Mexicans not to visit Arizona?
Yes, because according with this law, there is some risk for Mexican people, especially because
if a tourist goes to Arizona and has the proper visas, the proper papers, what's the risk?
Well, the risk is they look like Mexicans, and exactly they are Mexican, even they are visiting and buying things in Arizona. Let me tell you, Walt, that Mexican consumption in Arizona implied like $3 billion a year. So the tourism and other activities of Mexican people in Arizona works a lot for Arizona's economy.
So you think Arizona will pay a price for this new law?
I don't want a mutual understanding, and in particular, I don't want to move these very controversial feelings. I don't want to exacerbate bad feelings between Mexicans and Americans. We need to find out a solution. But it's clear for me that that law is not a solution at all.
All right, let's talk a little bit about Mexico's laws. I read an article in the Washington Times the other day. I'm going to read a paragraph to you, and you tell me if this is true or not true. This is from the Washington Times. Under the Mexican law, illegal immigration is a felony, punishable by up to 2 years in prison. Immigrants who are deported and attempt to re-enter can be imprisoned for 10 years. Visa violators can be sentenced to 6-year terms. Mexicans who help illegal immigrants are considered criminals. Is that true?
It was true, but it's not anymore. We derogate, or we erase that part of the law. Actually, illegal immigration is not a crime in Mexico, not anymore, since 1 year ago. And that is the reason why we are trying to establish our own comprehensive public policy, talking about, for instance, immigrants coming from Central America.
So people want to come from Guatemala or Honduras or El Salvador or Nicaragua. They want to just come into Mexico. They can just walk in?
No, they need to fulfill a form. They need to establish their right name. We analyze if they have not criminal precedents, and they coming into Mexico. Actually,
do Mexican police go around asking for papers of people they suspect are illegal immigrants?
Of course, in the border, we are asking the people, who are you? And if they explain...
At the border, I understand when they come in, but yes, once they're in...
But not in... once they are inside the country, what the Mexican police do is, of course, enforce the law, but any means, immigration is a crime anymore in Mexico.
Immigration is not a crime.
It's not a crime.
So in other words, if somebody sneaks in from Nicaragua or some other country in Central America through the southern border of Mexico, they wind up in Mexico, they can go get a job, they can work.
If somebody do that without permissions, we send back them.
You find them and you send them back.
However, especially with the people of Guatemala, we are providing new system in which any single citizen of Guatemala could be able to visit any single border state in Mexico in the south, and even with other requirements, he can or she can visit any parts of Mexico.
I ask the questions because there's an argument that people in Arizona and New Mexico and Texas, they say they're only trying to do in their states what Mexico itself does in the southern part of Mexico.
I know, and that is a very powerful argument, but that is one of the reasons why we are trying to change our policy. And let me be frank, Wolf, in the past, Mexican authorities were, in an unfortunate way in the treatment for immigrants. But now we are changing the policy. We changed already the law, and that is different today. We are trying to write a new story talking about immigrants, especially coming from Central American countries.
We're going to have a lot more of my exclusive interview with the president of Mexico, Felipe Calderon. I'll ask him about the almost 23,000 Mexicans who've died in the Mexican drug war on his watch, and whether the illegal cartels are winning. That's coming up later this hour here in the Situation Room. Here's a snapshot of where Americans stand on immigration. Our most recent CNN Opinion Research Corporation poll asked if the United States should make it easier for illegal immigrants to become U.S. citizens. 1/3 of those questions said yes, 2/3 said no.